Alrighty, guys, welcome back to the Identity Project. Today, I have a very special guest, the one, the only LCK, Laurie King. What's going on, girl? How are you?
Doing so good. So excited to be here. We go way back too. I think a lot of people don't realize you were one of the first people I knew when I moved to the big old lovely state of Texas. So we're like longtime friends, like super OG. So that's exciting.
Yeah, no, it's been, gosh, I haven't done CrossFit basically in like 2 to 3 years, but that's kind of where it all began.
And we were both so fit, like, not that we're not fit now, but like, I remember the first time, first couple times meeting you and just being like, Jesus Christ, this kid's so jacked, so good at fitness. What the fuck? So pretty funny to think about it considering neither of us CrossFit present day. So.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a fun period. I think back to it now and it's like this whole, speaking of the identity project, it's like an identity crisis, right? Because I'm like, damn, I'm never gonna be as strong as I ever was. Like, I'm never gonna be that shredded again. I'm never gonna be that fit. But I also don't work out 3, 4 hours a day, so I'm okay with that.
And the difference too is like, and this was the turning point for me, is like, yeah, like it's cool to be shredded, but like that doesn't do anything for anybody. And so it's like, if you can spend, an hour in the gym, be healthy, be fit, but versus spend the other 2, 3, 4, however many hours helping people and adding value and, making a difference, like why the fuck would you spend that time in the gym? I think everybody has to go through that phase of just kind of selfishly being all about, what you're doing, in the gym space and stuff like that. But like when you realize like there's more to life than just fucking exercising, like that's when your entire world changes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I honestly, I think my wife Alex all the time. I'm like, thanks for like putting up with that for 3, 4, 5 years. Like, because it really is super selfish. Even though, that was something that I really wanted to pursue. But yeah, that was the turning point. As soon as I graduated school, I was like, do I want to keep pursuing this, or do I want to go all in on my career? And obviously, that's what I chose to do. So.
Yeah, well, and that's one of those too where you're like, thank God that like people saw through the shit. Cause like my best friend's the same. Like when he met me when I was living in Houston, like I was working out 7 days a week, like doing 2-a-days. And I'm like, why did you even think to talk to me? Like, how did we stay, friends? Because if I like, now that I've like met me in other people or clients, like it's so easy to be like, what the fuck was I doing? But like when you're in that space, like it makes sense. It's totally logical. And then when you get out of the bubble, you're like, Jesus Christ, what were we doing?
Yeah. Well, I think just some human beings think that they're invincible at times. And, that was me. I was in school full time. I was working 50, 60 hours a week. I was competing at a regional level, like working out 3, 4 hours a day. I was sleeping like 5, 6 hours a night. And then after 3 years of competing, I literally felt like crap. I died. I ran myself into the ground. That's
Oh yeah.
what
Well, and talk about like nutrition stuff, like everything works until it doesn't, right? And like I think that's so true in the exercise space as well. Is like, at some point your body's just like, we're not doing this anymore. And you kind of just like, I always refer to it as the shit bucket that, but it's like your body's just like, yeah, we're done here. Like time to go, figure it the fuck out.
Yeah, absolutely. Our body has a funny way of, letting us know sometimes that, yeah, bro, you're not continuing on. No way. So Lori, keeping it true to the podcast, I love hearing people's stories. I love sharing stories that inspire. And, I think that you've had a pretty incredible journey of life thus far. And I'd love to be able to kind of dive back and really take you way, way back, maybe farther back than you've been in a while. So let's talk about elementary school, dude. Where were you born at? Tell us about your family growing up. And yeah, we'll start there.
Sure. So I always joke I was born in the middle of freaking nowhere. I'm from a place called Bloomington Normal, Illinois. So the best way I can describe it is that we had bring your tractor to school day. And just recently, a few years ago, like it's just a big college town. There's two major universities. And that's really all that's going on. But it's like even I went to visit my parents back in fall. And like, let me put it this way. It's like, my flight landed at like 10:30, 11 at night. And so got up, hanging out with my parents, and it was like 11 a.m. and you're like, cool. We have checked all the boxes on shit there is to do in this town. And so yeah, I'm from kind of a small but big town, if that makes any sense. But both of my parents, I come from a very definitely definition of middle income. Like dad was a truck driver, mom was a nurse. And yeah, just a small town. So my parents got divorced in second grade. So I was always kind of living the single parent, bouncing back and forth life. But actually ended up staying through college because it turned out I decided to go to school for nutrition dietetics, and Illinois State had one of the best dietetics. It was on the list of top 10 schools. And so I always thought for sure the second I graduated, it was I wanted to get to a bigger city, go to Chicago or Seattle or somewhere different. And then I turned out to be one of those people where, through college, it was fuck, I'm stuck in the loop of being here, because it just made sense. My parents always had the agreement with all the kids where it was hey, we believe in education. So you're going to have, a 4-year degree that we're going to pay for. We don't want you to have student debt or anything like that. And so it's I remember looking at, the price of Chicago schools, and it would be the cost of a semester was 25 or 30 grand. Whereas Illinois State, I could get the full degree for 25 or 30 grand. So it was just one of those crappy realizations where you're well, I guess we're going to stay here. So graduated from Illinois State, got my degree in, nutrition dietetics. And then 2 weeks later, bounced to Texas, got out of there, as fast as possible. So funny how that happens.
Yeah, I was the exact same in high school in terms of oh, I can't wait to get out of here. I hate this place. I'm never coming back. And I'm here in, DFW, which is actually a pretty good area. I go up to Kansas and very, very, very quickly realize, oh my God, this place is terrible. I love where I'm from. And then now, Frisco area, the Colony area, it's one of the fastest growing cities in the nation now. So to see this area and what everything's happened, I'm I want to stay here. This is cool. So, but yeah, I definitely remember that. I was very, very, very similar. It's funny how that works. So were you an only child, or did you have brother and sisters, or?
So I have 2 older brothers that are 10 and 12 years old. So I quickly realized growing up that I was absolutely an oops baby. Ironically, my parents actually wanted a girl from the start. And so they ended up having 2 boys. And then it was literally I was a margarita or wine type baby that, a couple of years later, oh, I guess we're doing this thing again. And so I always tell people when your siblings are that much older than you, it's actually like being an only child though, because it's even when I was, in junior high, my brothers were out of the house, so it was and especially being the only female with 2 older boys, it's I was definitely kind of princess treatment. So I feel I got the best of both worlds because definitely, had siblings, and that sort of thing. But for sure, got a little princess, pampering going on there without a doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that was one thing it actually blew my mind when I met Alex I found out she was an only child, and I was basically an only child till I was 8. And then my parents had twins, and then they had another unexpected 1 year later. But were you the only child that was spoiled and always acting like a brat, or were you the one that was actually oh my God, you're an only child, really?
It's funny because growing up, I was definitely a total brat. And then it's I kind of grew out of it too, thankfully. So I remember for sure used to throw fits on if we'd go out to eat, it had to be where I wanted to go out to eat, even if it wasn't my birthday, So praise my entire family because for sure, I was a little shitbag growing up.
Yeah, I think we probably all were in a sense. So were you talk about how you were in school? What were you a popular kid? Were you the little nerd? Obviously you're pretty smart with nutrition now, but were you how were you in school, especially in those elementary, middle school days?
Yeah. What's funny is, I always tell people that your greatest strengths, end up playing in the business world. And so like in school, I was for sure the kid where it was like, I always got straight A's. Like even in college, the only two classes that I had a B in were biochemistry and some other like super sexy, complicated, science class. So I always really like loved learning. I have very weird memory. So even like with textbooks and stuff like that, if I was taking a test, if a question came up, I would be like, hey, 6 in the lower left-hand corner, kind of having memory like that, where it's a very oddly specific, kind of photographic memory. But yeah, total, I would say like super smart. I was for sure the people, like the person that you came to and was like, oh shit, I forgot to do my homework. Like, can I copy yours? Like, yeah, I got you. So I was always that person. As far as actually like popularity and stuff like that, I was an interesting one. And I feel like this is still very true now, where it's like, everybody knew me and loved me, but I wasn't necessarily like the popular girl that, people wanted to date or, stuff like that. It was like, I hung out with the popular kids and I had a lot of friends, but I didn't necessarily have a ton of close friends because I didn't jive with a lot of the people that I feel like I went to school with. So it's super interesting because it's like present day, and now having a big social media following and stuff like that. And even, in school projects or in college, classes and stuff like that, it was like, I always end up being the leader, but it's not especially like, I can be transient and go both ways. Like sometimes I enjoy, kind of being that leading person or the person, kind of quote unquote in charge. Or like reversely, I also do enjoy like being a wallflower, just kind of kicking back. But there's also, I'll give that an asterisk because it's like, again, I care so much about, putting out quality things. That's like, I would be the person, if there was a group of 4 people in school, I would be the person that'd be like, hey, you guys don't have to do anything. Like, I'll do all the work. You can put your name on it. Like, I just don't want it to suck. I didn't want to like delegate out this task, which is super funny. So definitely, kind of a mixed bag there for sure.
Yeah, I was definitely the kid that would have asked for your homework to copy. I always joke. I'm like, for as serious as I took sports and as dedicated as I was towards that, I mean, I was the kid that literally, 6 a.m. workouts, never miss a day, but go into first period, put my head on the desk and go to sleep.
100%.
So that's so funny. So, I mean, did you like being an only child? Did you struggle with that at all? Were you ever like at home and you're like, oh my God, I'm just like so bored and I have nobody to play with? Or
so it's funny because my parents were never home because my parents both worked. So my mom, being a nurse, she would always work like second and third shift. So like she was either sleeping during the day or, she was working. My dad always worked like basically 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. And so like, I'd get home and you just be like, cool, look at all this room for activities. And so like, I thankfully had a couple of my friends growing up, like their parents quickly realized it. So like I was the kid that just always got invited over for dinner, just always, came over to hang out and stuff like that. So especially like as I got older and older, like I said, it was just very hands off with my parents and stuff like that. So like I had a lot of freedom and like somehow still never got in trouble. Like I was never the kid. I remember getting like grounded in high school because my parents would be like, oh, you're out late with friends. Like you guys must be doing, hood rat things or doing drugs. And you'd be like, no, like, we would like sneak out and then like just go hang out at the park or something. Like even present day, like I've still never smoked marijuana, like super innocent child. I mean, I love giving my parents shit about it present day. Cause like I said, I think parents like always assume the worst. So it's like, even, I don't think I drank alcohol up until like 6 months before I turned 21 because it was like, oh, I should probably take that for a test ride before, I feel like everybody goes through that stage in college where you're just, young and dumb and, out of control. But I was just a super innocent child, kind of in that. So it was like, I was a very easy kid because again, it was like, I just want to, play sports and, do good in school and like check that box.
Yeah, that's cool. I was not that. I was the kid that thought that he needs to get in trouble and be the cool kid and thought he was invincible and got involved with all the drugs and all that crazy stuff. So I'm glad you didn't go down that route. But I learned a lot. 18 years old, I think from 16 to 18, I think I learned more than a lot of people at that age. Like at 18 years old, I was definitely woke the fuck up. So
Yep. Well, and I tell people too, like in college, like I feel like all my friends were like the dumb friends, and so it was like I was the mom that was like, wow, like good thing I'm here. Y'all would be, like taking home people you shouldn't be taking home, or, just, not in a good space. So even in college, like it was fairly tame because it was just like, you guys are dumb. Like, let's not do this, So always just been a fairly level-headed person. And so obviously, like even in college, I went through a couple months of partying a little bit harder and stuff like that. And then it was like, man, this sucks. It's expensive and you just don't feel good. And so that even, present day, it's like I maybe drink once or twice a year. Like it's just not something, I don't mind it. I don't have any issues going out and being social, but like even if we're going out to a bar, like I'll go out and be sober. Like I'm so much of a party just by myself, like I don't need that assistance.
yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, very, very, very similar to Alex actually in that sense. Like it's like she's always been the one that's like, oh, I don't need a drink. Like I can have all the fun in the world. For me, I'm like, yes, I can have fun, but like I would much rather drink. I think I'll have more fun. But
For
so
sure.
what sports did you play? So what did, like in your elementary school days, what did you what was your first introduction to kind of sports?
So I was a gymnast majority of my life. So I started gymnastics at 4 or 5 years old, and it was actually by accident. One of my neighbors that, because it's like my parents would leave for work, and so I'd just go like to the neighbor's house. And so she was enrolled in gymnastics, and like, to be honest, she wasn't super good. And I was just that person. Like I always tell people, like everything with gymnastics, like you're just playing like, but did you die? Like gymnastics stuff isn't hard. Like it's just, oh, this is scary as fuck. Like, and you can't like not commit to doing something, right? Like if you're doing a tumbling pass, or if you're on a trampoline, like you can't like half commit to doing a back tuck or a double full, or it's like full send, or like you're gonna injure yourself. And so I started gymnastics. They quickly realized like, oh, she's really good at this. And so kind of slid into the competitive thing, would travel a couple times a month, go to different meets in Chicago and, various areas and stuff like that. My personal, like, because there's 4 events, there's floor, vault, beam, and bars. I was horrific at bars and beam, and I was always really good at tumbling and really good with floor and vault. And so same thing, I actually ended up doing tumbling and trampoline quite a few years as well. Went to state for both of those. Same thing, went to state and regionals quite a few times for gymnastics as well. So I always tell people like movement is my love language. Like I just love being active. I love being outside. I love doing things. And so even over the years, obviously in junior high, you start to get to play a little bit more sports. And so I did a lot of short distance track, did a lot of volleyball. Later in high school is when essentially with gymnastics at some point you kind of hit the wall where you're like, wow, since I was 5 years old, I've trained 6 days a week. It was like you would get up, go to school, go to gymnastics from like 4 to 9, rinse and repeat, just, day in and day out. And so I think by some point, right around, like early high school, it was like, wow, like I just want to hang out with friends and I want to have, a social circle and stuff like that. And so at some point, I kind of called quits on gymnastics. And so kind of tried to build that, like fill that void with other things, and did a lot of like, we'll jokingly call it, soul searching. So I got into competitive cheerleading because again, obviously you get to fumble and, still do different things. But again, even in high school, it was like lots of volleyball, lots of track, lots of cheerleading. And then it really like post college is when I continued to try and fill that void. And so, was going to Pilates, was going to yoga. And I actually even took classes to be like an instructor for those, because like, you know, there were like little certification courses you could take in college. So like that was almost like a rabbit hole that I went down. And then I happened to, my mom was really into running marathons for a while. And so she was doing an event through work, which was the Chicago Marathon. And so like her work would actually pay for it. So she was like, hey, like I'm doing this thing, you know, do you want to sign up for it? And so I happened to be taking like one of those little 1 credit hour like college classes where it was just like, it was called like walk jog, you know, 101 or something like that. And so I think initially with the semester, you know, it was, you start out and you would run like a 400, rest 2 minutes, run a 400, you know, rest 2 minutes. And then at some point, you know, by the end of the semester, it was like you were running, you know, 9 or 10 miles in the week. And so I was like, oh, it's running things like this isn't so bad. And so same time, you know, my mom was like, hey, you must sign up for the Chicago Marathon. It was like, wow, that sounds terrifying. Like 26 miles a lap. But like, fuck yeah, you know, so I signed up. And so I was following the Hal Higdon like marathon training plan. So it would start out, you know, you would run lower mileage and then like longer runs on the weekend, and you know, it kept titrating up. And so it was right around, this was June or July of 2012. I happened to go visit my brother that was living in Seattle at the time. And so his sister-in-law, or my sister-in-law, excuse me, aka his wife, was doing CrossFit. And so she was like, hey, I'm doing this thing. Like, I think you should try it, you know, especially with your gymnastics background. Like, I think you could be really good at it. And so like, I shit you not, like I remember it was a Thursday and my training plan called for me to run a half marathon. So it was, I went out and crashed like 13 miles in the woods. And then the next day I went with my sister-in-law, you know, to try CrossFit for the first time. And so same thing, you know, like it was, the first workout we did was Grace. So it was 30 clean and jerks per time. Then afterwards, you know, there was some skill work with, you know, pull-ups. And so same thing, you know, it's like, I'm very good about if I watch you do something, I can watch it a couple times and then I can do it. So like same thing. I was like, I'd never done a pull up, you know, since elementary school, you know, when you do them for the tests and stuff. I'd never done like kipping pull ups, and you know, that day was just like cranking them out like crazy. And like same thing, even fast forward, you know, into, you know, the CrossFit years, but it was like, I was that person, like I didn't know what a muscle up was. And then, you know, it came up in an open workout, and like I got my first muscle up, you know, during an open workout. So that's always, you know, just been my jam. But it's so funny to me that it's like, wow, you ran 13 miles. And then the next day, you know, found CrossFit, and like it just changed my whole life, because then it was like, well, why would I run for 2 or 2.5 hours by myself if I could work out with people? It's super fun. It's always different. There's loud music, you know, there's community. And so even training for the marathon, it was like, I literally stopped running. I would do like 1 long run a week and then just go, you know, CrossFit the rest of the week. And so fast forward, you know, that fall, ran the marathon. And then it was really when I moved to Texas after graduating that I kind of slid into the competitive sector, because again, it's like, oh, this thing's really cool. This is really fun. Let's keep doing it. And, you know, it's just that challenge of seeing, you know, what your body can do, wanting to be stronger. And it was such a good mental shift for me too, because I tell people in college, like I weighed 92 pounds when I started CrossFit. And like, it wasn't like just me being like skinny fat. It was like me, you know, being tiny, but super shredded and diced, you know? And so I think that's why like CrossFit kind of flipped that switch for me, because it was like, oh, this is something new to, you know, kind of push the limits of my body. But it really flipped the switch also of, rather than just like looking in the mirror and obsessing what I look like every day, it flipped that switch where it was like, oh my God, I just want to see like, this week I lifted this weight. I want to lift more weight. I want to move better. I want to do better at, you know, X, Y, and Z. And so it really changed my life and gave me a healthier relationship with my body and food, because I stopped giving a shit, you know, what I look like, and just became so obsessed with seeing, you know, what can my body achieve? What can we do? And I think that's so cool. And that's part of why, you know, like I said, I don't present day CrossFit. I kind of do more bodybuilding and lifting. But I appreciate that switch, because again, like 92 pounds was way too skinny. Like looking back, you know, and at that time I didn't think I was tiny, you know, it was like, oh no, this is fine. Like now, like I weigh 130 pounds. Like that's quite the shift. but like now I look healthy, I'm strong. Like I wasn't healthy then, you know? So it's that part's a little bit crazy to kind of reflect on, where you're like, holy shit, man, like that's basically, 40 pounds of weight difference, across a couple of years. But just super insane,
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that. There's so many things I want to pull out of there actually. So when you were, I think that gymnastics is 100% the first thing that I'm putting our kids into. I think it does so many things for athletes going forward into the rest of their life. So can you talk a little bit about that, and like, what do you feel you like learned from gymnastics, and what did it like kind of set you up for being successful in all of the other sports that you did?
So I'm going to give you an answer that you probably weren't expecting, because I love talking about this all the time. So like, people that know me present day, I'm very committed to the idea of, like, if I say I'm going to do something, like it's going to happen. Or if I put my mind on like, hey, I want to achieve, insert the blank, like I will kill myself to make that happen. And the funny part is that like, that was self-taught more recently in the past few years, because growing up, I was totally a coach's nightmare. Like I was a total shitbag little kid in that regard, where it was like, I would go into practice every day and like, I would complain, I would whine, it'd be like, oh, I can't believe we have to, do this. Or, I was kind of like a little negative, just like shitbag is a very good phrase there. And then at some point I realized, like, again, in retrospect, you're like, man, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be the person that, shows up and complains or stuff like that. And so, I kind of just rewrote that narrative of, not complaining or, being a negative person. But as far as gymnastics, like, I think, again, if I hadn't spent half of my life being so dedicated and committed to something, like, I tell people all I know how to do is work. Like I've never been somebody comfortable with like hey, I have a 9-to-5 job. I check the box and time to go. It's like, even, working in restaurants and stuff like that in college, it was like, I was always trying to pick up extra shifts or, just always trying to go the extra mile. And, over delivery has always just been my memo. And so I'm so prideful of what I put my name on. I'm so prideful in the things I do. And I don't know how to half-ass things present day. And like I said, that's so interesting, because it definitely bleeds from just that day in, day out commitment of like, hey, this is what we do. Like you didn't have the option in practice, right? And so there's so many strengths I have present day as a result of that. And I'm so grateful, because again, a lot of people don't like working, or, like the idea of owning a business doesn't work for a lot of people because they don't want to put in the work, or, unfortunately people are lazy, or they want to do the bare minimum. And like all those ideas like give me anxiety, right? Or again, like I put my heart and soul into everything I do, like bust my ass on everything I do. And that's definitely, it's a direct reflection of like, that was just what I grew up doing, was just doing the work. Like I don't know how to do anything but that.
Yeah, I love that. I completely agree. I think it's interesting because it's like a little bit of a double-edged sword though, right? Because you get that positive piece, but no different than you. With me, it was baseball, and it was from like 3-4 years old till 16 when I finally just quit. Like one random day, I'm like, I'm done. I was playing 160 games a year at that point. And so it was like between high school and select. And at that point, I literally was just done. I got burnt out. And I think that's a really big conversation too. All these thoughts are coming in my head now, like becoming a parent, but it's like not forcing things on kids, making sure that like they, have that love for whatever they're doing and that passion, and not, really trying hard not to let them get burnt out on whatever they're doing. So any thoughts around that topic?
Oh man. I mean, I agree, because like if I talk about like my biggest present day struggle, like that's literally what it is again, like I am so hardwired to just go, go, go. And so same thing, with competitive CrossFit, like that was how it all happens. Like, again, if I'm going to do something, like I'm going to move to a gym full of games athletes that are better than me, like I'm cashing full and I'm making this happen. And same thing. So like the balance I'm always trying to, titrate is like, hey, you need to be a person and you need to go hang out with friends, or you need to take days off, or you need to, like, I just recently took I basically booked like a last minute trip because I was just starting to feel a little bit burnout, a little bit uninspired. And I can always tell, like, present day, I write so much content for social media. And so, like, if I'm struggling to sit down at a keyboard and like the words aren't flowing, like that's when you're like, oh shit, like we're going down the path of, too much, we're burnout. And it's hard because, again, when you just show up and work every single day, it happens all of a sudden where you're just like, oh, fuck, I'm here, I'm uninspired, I suck, shit. And so having some stopgaps in play, but like that's something I struggle with present day so much, is just constantly putting in stops to myself so that I don't get burnout, so that I don't hit that land of just uninspiration. And that shit's hard. It's so stinging hard. And part of it's too, a lot of people in the CrossFit space tend to be type A people. I'm definitely a very type A person as well. And so, like, I've tried to teach myself how to be more of a type B, go with the flow. Hey, it's okay to not be a Gary V and just, grind, hustle, hustle. Learning how to be the anti, of Gary V is definitely a constant practice. And it's just so hard because, like I said, you don't know you're burnt out until one day it just shows up and says, what's up, world? It happens very, very quickly, if you're not paying attention super close. So.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, it's the all or nothing mentality. And like, it's almost, I've actually had quite a few guests on the show, and we've talked about like addiction, and, that was something that I've struggled with. I've had family members that have struggled with it. I've had, my aunt actually struggled with it so bad, unfortunately, that she, lived her whole life basically on drugs, and then ended up dying in a homeless shelter. The homeless shelter caught on fire. But this is after years and years of just being abused and really living a really bad life. So I saw like what drugs, what addiction, could do. But yet, even after hearing all those things, like I still ended up going down that route for a little bit. But I think it's an interesting parallel as you look into things like gymnastics or CrossFit or being an entrepreneur, and it's an addiction. I mean, it's still the same thing. So it's like this constant like balancing act, if you will, of, like I think Ben Bergeron actually talked about this, and he had like 5 balls, right? It's like the juggling act of life, and there's 5 balls, and 4 of them are rubber. So that could be like career and whatever else. But the glass ball, that's family. And so you're just juggling. And if you drop one of those others, it's bouncy, it'll bounce off the ground. If you drop family, it's glass, it shatters. And so, that shifted perspective for me, because it was like, we always say family is most important and all of that, but we can get caught up in the career and the entrepreneur and like doing all of those things. And it's like, I could get to the top of the mountain. I could reach all the goals that I ever wanted on the business. But like, if I don't have my family there with me, like it doesn't mean anything.
Well, and like, I think the bigger talking point too, and a lot of people don't realize, is that addiction comes in many forms, and it's not just alcohol. It's not just drugs. I'm 100% guilty of an addictive personality. And so like in college, it manifested in different ways. I was in a super like unhealthy relationship with somebody that I just shouldn't have been in a relationship with. And, they were struggling with, mental issues and stuff like that. And so like in my head, it was like, oh, I have to fix this person. Like I was addicted to trying to help them, through their struggles and stuff like that. And then, you talk about with competitive exercise, like that's an addiction. Like it's not normal to go to the gym for, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours a day. And they talk about, like people that are at the games level and people that are, the best athletes. And it's like they're mentally ill, like there's a problem if you're able to just beat your body into the floor day in and day out and, come seeking more. And then you talk about, again, with like nutrition stuff. Well, shit, man, like you're not a doctor. But at pure essence, people are hiring you to fix their problems, whether that's their inability to find balance in social situations, whether that's improve their relationship with food, to change and manipulate the body. Same thing. Like that's very addictive when somebody says, hey, I'm struggling with XYZ, and you're like, oh my God, I know how to fix that, and so you start coaching them. And so like, I think that's the most interesting parallel. And then obviously you talk about your present day running your own business. Like I always tell people, like, money, I never came from money, so money's never been a motivating factor, although obviously, it's necessary to pay bills. It's nice to be able to travel or, buy stuff or whatever. But like what I get addicted to is, like for example, we have a gym programming group. We have over 400 members. And so like I get excited by logging in every day and seeing, oh my God, this is how many members we have. Oh my God, we have so many more members. Oh my God, like, and very same thing with nutrition. It's like, holy shit, and it's just so crazy because again, like it's not about the outcome. It's about seeing something grow, or it's about seeing something get bigger, or seeing something get better. And physically seeing that payoff of, doing that work. And then this is the outcome. Oh my God, well, I need to keep doing this. And so I think that's the fun part is again, yes, a lot of people struggle with physical addictions, but so many people like myself, like we struggle, with a totally different set of addictions, or even, social media again, like we were talking previously before off air, but it's like this past year, I went from, 3,000 followers to, close to 40K present day. And so it's like, well, you're getting these DMs, you're getting these comments, you're getting all this feedback from people. And so you have to keep up with it. And it's like, that's a hard one to find balance for too, because it's like, well, yes, like that's a good way to spend your time, but like, is that the best ROI way to spend your time? Like, and so finding balance with that, like that's a struggle too. So I think again, like that's the biggest thing I'm trying to do present day is like, I used to be a very type A person. Thankfully, like my best friend and he's, one of my business partners, like he's like total left field of type B. So it's like, how do we, if we're these two polar different, gummy bears, how do I meet in the middle? Because again, like that addictive personality is what makes me great. It's what's accomplished all the things that we've accomplished this past year. But at the same time, how do you cut that off a little bit too?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I think it's interesting just reflecting back throughout life thus far and seeing, all of these different things that you've had to deal with. And then like knowing that going forward for the rest of our lives, like we're going to run into, these seasons of life where it's just like, it's ebb and flow. I mean, it's going to keep happening. Right. And it's like, I always joke, I'm like, you just have to roll with the punches, like bob and weave, it's like, it's like a boxing match. So I love that. All right. I know we got a little bit of a tangent. Let's transition back to you. Let's go to like back to high school here. And as you transition, so you went through school, you got done with school, and like, I guess at what point through high school, college, did you know that like it was nutrition? Like, did you know that going into school or no? No.
So I always tell people I actually wanted to go to school for like graphic design or interior design. I'm a super creative person. So I wanted to do something with that. And so it was right at the time, we both graduated in 2008 when like the economy and stuff like that wasn't good. And so my parents were like, dude, fuck that. Like you need to do something that's safe, something that makes money and, which is very fair, because again, the economy was garbage at that time. But so how I actually ended up in the nutrition sector is that basically I was diagnosed hypothyroid at 17 or 18 years old. It was, again, like junior or senior year of college or high school, excuse me. And so kind of leading up to that, it was like things just started getting weird where it was like I was sleeping upwards of 14, 15, 16 hours a day. And I started missing school because I was just so exhausted that, all I wanted to do was sleep. And so my parents obviously, took me to a doctor. We got a bunch of blood work drawn and started medication, things got better. But the problem was that, again, kind of I had never struggled, with my body weight my entire life because I had always been so active with gymnastics and, various sports. And so I started to struggle with my weight a little bit. And it was like, well, this, things aren't adding up because I'm eating okay. It wasn't, like present, what I wanted to eat. Given the situation, it was like I wasn't eating terribly. I was still super active, a couple hours a day. And I was still, starting to slowly put on weight, kind of hands. And so I started taking medication for the thyroid stuff, and it improved slightly. But even, it's like I've struggled my whole life, with trying to keep, a certain body composition. And for those that aren't super familiar, your thyroid is your master gland. It directly oversees, your sex hormones, your menstrual cycle. All of that's intimately connected. It controls, your body temperature, metabolism, everything under the sun, your thyroid is in charge of. And so even, later in high school, it was like, fuck man, like I'm just struggling so bad. And so, kind of my perception was that, okay, the only thing the doctor did was write a prescription. It wasn't like, hey, do these things to change your nutrition, or, change your lifestyle, or change, like there was no advice given from the doctor other than, hey, take this pill every morning, goodbye. So kind of part of my thought process was, wow, why don't I go to school for this, try to understand it more so that I can help myself, with all of these health problems that I'm dealing with. And again, I think that it makes sense that, if you're not feeling well, you continue to gain weight, your relationship with food kind of goes to shit too. So like that kind of propelled me into having like an eating disorder where it was like I was essentially starving myself and still continuing to lose, like to not lose weight, or still continuing to see the scale climb up, and my clothes get tighter, and just all these different things. And so it was kind of this idea that, cool, like doctors aren't helpful. Selfishly, I want to go to school to better help myself and better understand all this, but also help others never be in the position that I'm in, right? Because that's scary to think like, I spent, 17, 18, 19, years old, not eating any food. Like I would commit to saying, less than 500 or 600 calories. Like I remember it was like, I would eat like a protein bar and, maybe like 100-calorie, Campbell's soup or something. Like we were not eating food. And I was still just continuing, like I said, to struggle. So I think, the fun part about all that is, as I got into school, as I started understanding things, and then later as I started working with people, like my relationship with food came full circle, because again, it was like, oh, this isn't, like a pill can't fix an issue. Like, yes, it might temporarily put a Band-Aid on things, but understanding and doing research and reading, every book that I could get my hands on, listening to podcasts, and starting to understand like, oh, your thyroid is a reflection of your diet, your lifestyle, the way you exercise, your environmental exposures. And even present day, like I think that's where my passion for women's health and that whole sector of the universe came, is like, wow, there's so many women that aren't educated about their menstrual cycle and, aren't aware of the different things in our environment, and the way that we live that can affect all that. So I think it's just been a really cool past couple of years, just really immersing myself in nutrition, and in that whole sector, because it is like we don't live in a vacuum. And so it's like everybody is kind of their own little unique snowflake and has their own unique issues. And it's figuring out, how does that puzzle look for you?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I 100% agree. And, I think as I'm thinking back, there are a few different things that you went through there. Like one, I really want to dig into is the psychological, the emotional side of that, finding out that at such a young age you're diagnosed with hypothyroid, and then the doctor, really not being on your team in a sense, like not wanting to like educate you, and more so just saying, here, take this, which is one thing that we also see pretty similar with, birth control, which is something you talk a lot about, which is, oh, you're in college, here you go, So emotionally, like, were there times that you were like in tears? You were just like, what is wrong with me? Like, were you struggling on that level?
Totally. And so like kind of to go further in the backstory, at 15 or 16 years old, I struggled with cystic acne so bad that like I tell people, like if I would stay at a friend's house, I would put on makeup before we'd go to bed because it was just so horrifically bad. And same thing, like I was one of those people that, every time I would have my menstrual cycle, it was like I would miss school, or I just struggled with such heavy bleeding, such heavy cramps, like such discomfort And so at 15 or 16, you go to the OBGYN and he says, oh, like easy enough, writes a little prescription. And so I started taking hormonal birth control, not even for like pregnancy prevention, but simply for, now what I recognize as symptom management. And so I started taking birth control in my early high school years. And then, a couple of years later, like I said, was diagnosed with thyroid stuff. And then later, the funny part is that, with thyroid stuff, medicine is still so behind the times. And so many doctors don't pull the right labs for a proper thyroid diagnosis, but a lot of people don't even test thyroid antibodies. And so what can happen is that basically it's an autoimmune condition. You have these antibodies that are attacking your thyroid gland. Obviously, your thyroid becomes compromised. It's not able to pump out thyroid hormone and thus, hypothyroidism. And so I don't think it wasn't until, my late 20s that I realized I actually had the autoimmune component to my thyroid issues because nobody had ever tested it. Because again, it's just so hands off. And so part of the issue that I now understand is I was just seeing a primary doctor, your regular old physician that you'd see if it's like, hey, I've got, a strep throat or something. I should have the entire time been referred out to an endocrinologist and somebody that specializes in, thyroid disorders and stuff like that. So I believe that's part of the issue is, again, I don't even want to put the blame on other people, although I would hope on their end that, again, they should have recognized this was out of their field and referred me to, a proper doctor. But even I remember this was 2 years ago when I lived in Houston. I had a doctor where it was like, every 6 months I'll go get some lab work drawn. And so the doctor was refusing to draw thyroid antibodies. And he was like, oh, that's not real. We don't need to test those. And it was like, is that a joke? Like you're saying that, Hashimoto's isn't a real diagnosis. And so like I had to fight tooth and nail. It's like present day, that's what I specialized in coaching, right? Like I went through a phase where it was like for a solid year, like I would say 80 to 90% of the clientele I was working with were, clients with thyroid stuff. And so like I raised hell in this in this office, arguing with them, and finally he pulled it. But I think that's the thing is like all doctors are not created equal. And so even I tell people, you want to find a doctor that's more on the integrated or functional side of things, try more holistic or more naturopathic, because they're more inclined to get into the diet, the lifestyle, the environment sectors, rather than just saying, again, like if you go see a physician, they're just going to say, oh, cool, well, here's this pill, goodbye. And part of that comes from our healthcare system where a doctor only gets 7 or 8 minutes. So I get it, right? They don't have time to go through, all the things. Or even if you talk with 15 or 16 years old, like at that point, I think everybody's in the phase where it's like, what do you eat, food wise? Cookies, Red Bull, breakfast cereal, like sugar and shit. Whereas, now I know present day, it's like I don't have issues with my menstrual cycle. Like we're super symptomless, clockwork, stuff like that. But no doctor ever said like, hey, asshole, like, why don't you try changing the foods that you're eating? Or in that case, again, it's like, I was eating tons of gluten and dairy, which I have an issue with both present day. Like I can't eat gluten. Like I have severe reactions when I do, more times than not. I'm lactose intolerant. So again, it was like at the time, it was just pumping my body full of all these things that was reacting. And even with environmental exposures, I tell people like we are what we eat and what we come in contact with. And so a lot of people don't realize, the makeups we use, the hair care products we use, skincare, all of that stuff are endocrine disruptors. All of them are xenoestrogens that are going to impact our hormone profile. And so like, if I could go back at 16, I wish I could tell myself like, hey, like use safer skincare, use higher quality products, and, be careful, try to find products that are free of sulfates and parabens and, just all these different chemicals, use safer products then, stop eating gluten and dairy, stop eating sugar, drink water, get enough fiber, so there's all these things that's like, God, I just wish sometimes I could go back and like talk to my 16-year-old self. But that's why I'm so passionate about the women's health space now is, again, like that could have been such a simple conversation that would have changed my whole life rather than spending, 12 plus years on hormonal birth control. And for me, hormonal birth control it gave me issues, mentally with depression and anxiety. I tell people, like, when I went off of birth control this past year, it was like somebody put the color back into my world of, black and white. And I think that's such a powerful statement, but it's like, again, like, I used to be such a creative person, and over the years, like, I lost that. And like I said, like, when I would wake up in the morning, like, being happy and being positive, like, it was a choice that I made. It wasn't just, people present day know me as, this loud, outgoing, sunshine, type of person. And it's like, that didn't used to be that way, when I was on hormonal birth control. So I think overall, just so many things, like I don't think there's anything wrong with taking thyroid meds. There's nothing wrong with taking hormonal birth control, but there has to be the bigger conversations around them too of, again, hey, like, I never, like, even present day, like, I've been single for 4 or 5 years now. Like, I have zero need to even worry about pregnancy prevention. So why did I need to be on hormonal birth control? I could have addressed that and, just had such a different outcome, my later college and post-college years, without all those medications. And, same thing with the thyroid meds. It's like, sometimes you need them and sometimes you're going to be on them your whole life. And for a lot of people, it's overly prescribed because the underlying root issue might be they need to eat more food, or they're struggling with, liver toxicity, poor gut health. They're dealing with, food sensitivities. They're never addressing the bigger picture. So medications and stuff like that are just they're such a hard topic. It's going to be so person specific. But there's just so many things. Like, if I could go back in time, like, I wish I knew what I knew now, because my entire life would have been so much different, But I'm also grateful for all that, because, again, it's the passion behind what I do present day. And I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing in the women's space had I not gone through all of that and personally experienced it myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think just, it all comes full circle, right? Because it's like, what if you wouldn't have gone down the nutrition route? What if you would have got a degree in business and never would have had the time to learn about all this stuff? And all of your problems would have just got worse and worse. And you would have been 40, 50 years old, still, trying to seek out help. So, I think we're put in a place, we go through things in our life for a reason. And, I think that you being able to pay it forward now and help others and allow them maybe to not have to go through that. I mean, that's what life is about. I mean, that's amazing. So,
and I think that this next few years, you're going to see a big shift in the women's space. And it's a space that desperately needs it, because there's so many women, like the saying we hear all the time is that, like, having, miserable periods and struggling with horrific cramps and acne and bloating and all these symptoms, they may be common, but they're not normal. And so we're starting to see more conversation around that. We're starting to see people write books on the topics. We're starting to see people, do more podcasts and put out more information out there. And it's a conversation that people are receptive of, because, again, there's so many women that are just struggling, chronically dieting their whole life, struggling with their body appearance, their self-image, and having that conversation that it doesn't have to be that way. Like, that's a message that needs to reach from wide, because it is, so many women out there don't understand that, periods can be symptomless. So many women don't understand that hormonal birth control, you can prevent pregnancy naturally, very effectively in numerous ways, but we haven't been formally having that conversation. Doctors, it's, again, hormonal birth control is just a tidy fix-all solution, where it's like, regardless of what symptoms you're struggling with, whether it's an irregular period, you're not having a period, whether you're struggling with symptoms, hormonal birth control can usually, temporarily improve a lot of that. But then reversely, we also see women when it's no longer time to prevent pregnancy and they want to start having families and, they want to start having babies, that things, go super sideways. Or the one that makes my heart ache is, so many women will have their baby, and then, obviously after 9 months, you're like, okay, I don't want another one of these. And so you have this woman whose hormones are in a fragile state after 9 months of pregnancy. she has the baby, and then it gets shuffled right back onto hormonal birth control, which it shuts down all hormonal function, right? Like it basically presses off switch on your hormones. You have all these poor women that, they have babies. And then, add in the fact that, they're like, oh, well, I want my body back. So they try to go, they're trying to cut calories and they're trying to lose all this weight. And so there's this shift of, these women in like the 30 to 50-year-old range where it's just like, oh my gosh, like guys, we have to have better conversations about what to do with our nutrition, our medications, and just raise awareness, because again, it's like ultimately at the end of the day, like my goal is just helping people be better educated in their decisions so that they can then build a plan that's best for them. Because again, that's the conversation I never got. I was never told, oh, hey, you might struggle with depression and anxiety as a result of your, hormonal birth control. And that's such a common symptom. It was like there was never, like, consent is such a great word, but, there's just so many people being handed these pills and prescriptions, but they're not being given the education to make that decision. That's the only option they're given. And so I just desperately, desperately want to see a different outcome on that sector.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, I've seen it. I mean, I've been in the field now for almost 10 years, and probably over the last like 3 is when I think a lot of these topics started being, presented and talked about a lot more. And, you see it a lot. Like you see it. I mean, I've seen it now with so many different clients in so many different situations, but it's a very real thing. And so, one thing you mentioned earlier, and I really want to bring this point up because I think it's a huge like argument or topic of conversation right now, which is, you mentioned when you were in high school there and you were eating 500 calories a day, 700 calories a day, but you were gaining weight. Now, the question that people ask is, well, I thought if you're in a calorie deficit, that's what makes you lose weight. So how is she eating 500 calories a day and gaining weight? That's impossible. That doesn't make sense. Can you like break that down for us?
Absolutely. So what happens is that, our bodies are this incredible vehicle that they have to put up with the shit that we put it through, right? And so your body's very intelligent, and it's, we have to survive. And so it's going to put mechanisms into place so that that can happen. And so for a lot of people, the analogy I like to give is, say you got stranded on an island and you only have a backpack of food. Well, you're going to be rationing every morsel of that food because, again, you walked around the island. There are animals. There are things to eat. You don't know, when more food is coming. And so, what do? You're going to ration out, every morsel. You're going to adjust accordingly. And so very similarly, our body operates much the same. And so it actually comes back to, your thyroid is one of the main hormones that happens to. And we have other, hormones that are going to downregulate in that situation as well. But so your body recognizes like, oh shit, there's not food. So it starts to slow all those processes down. Your metabolism starts to be, how can we spend the least amount of energy because we don't have the fuel we need to survive? And so your body just keeps downregulating. And so the technical term would be like metabolic adaptation. But again, like maybe your set point is, should be like, hey, for me, like my maintenance calories present day are right around like 2,500 calories. But if I'm chronically just, dieting, eating less food, if I'm averaging, say, 1,000 calories, your body, takes that set point and it goes, and that's where you operate. And so for a lot of people, it's again, like your body's just down-regulated. Like your body just kind of said, well, fuck this person, like I'm out. And so again, I think calories in, calories out is such a controversial topic because again, you have people that are saying, oh, well, my watch says I burned this calories and, I went to Orange Theory and they guarantee that I burned, X amount of calories. And it's like, yes and no, like our body isn't that simple. Again, our body is a very complicated animal, but it all comes down to, what's your personal history? For some people, you might only need a very slight deficit because, you're super active outside of the gym. You've always had a good relationship with food in terms of, you haven't, if you're somebody where it's like you hire me and it's like, hey, what diets have you done? Keto, paleo, carnivore, Weight Watchers, zone, all the diets. Like, well, you're somebody that, unfortunately you've treated your body like shit. So your body's not going to be super receptive to a caloric deficit. I like to use the phrase a lot of like, you have to earn the right to diet. But again, like there's never, it's so crazy, right? Like we sit in school behind desks for, upwards of 12 to 18 years or more. And nobody ever teaches us, how to eat right and how to fuel our body. Or most people have a basic understanding of, okay, if I want to lose weight, I have to eat less food. But nobody gives you that idea of like, hey, well, you can't just keep dieting and you can't just keep, doing things. Because again, at some point, your body gets really tired of being in that place. Or it would be the equivalent, if your doctor said, hey, I want you to come work 60 hours this week and then next week and the week after that. And, at some point, like you go to work 7 days a week and it's fine. But over time, you're going to be less efficient. You're not going to be motivated or inspired, to get shit done. Like your body's no different. And so just having that conversation that again, like, yes, like there's nothing wrong with dieting. There's nothing wrong to, with manipulating your body and eating less food and trying to change your body composition. But there's so many other pieces to the equation, right? Or like, I think my favorite is, people be like, well, I dropped 20 pounds, but I still don't have abs. And it's like, well, motherfucker, like in order to gain muscle and in order to get stronger, we have to eat in a surplus. So like, yes, if you have those muscles built up under there and you diet, you might find them. But if you've never, like in an ideal world, like we should really have three phases. Like it should be like we're eating at maintenance, which is what our body, needs. We can eat in a surplus or we can eat in a deficit, and so it's like you should kind of be bouncing back and forth between each of those. But most people are only ever taking from the ATM, right? So it's like suddenly, if all you've ever done, if you're somebody that's like, oh, how long have you been dieting? My whole life. Like that's my mother, for example. Sorry, mom. But if you talk to my mom, she's quote unquote always had 5 pounds to lose. So we have to start raising that conversation of like how to properly diet, how to properly, gain muscle. And so like, that's actually, I came out with one ebook this next year that was kind of just like a catch-all of like all the things that I've learned from coaching, since I started this whole nutrition thing, back when I went to school, 2012, 2013. And so that was kind of, the first ebook that I came out for people. And like my current ebook that's going to bounce out here in the next month or two is literally just all about fat loss, gaining and maintaining. And it's like every single chapter, like that's the big take home point is like, guys, we should spend most of the time not dieting or, we should just spend the most of our time every single year just eating adequately and, letting our body and our hormones be in good space. And then, we can spend 4 to 12 weeks, dieting. And then we have to dial up food and come back to maintenance. And we have to let hormones, come back to planet Earth. And then reversely, maybe you want to, put on some more muscles so that you're leaner the next time, you do a cut. And so it's like, cool, you spend time at maintenance, you go spend, some people might choose to do a surplus for upwards of, 6 months or, reversely as short as a couple of months. But it's like, this idea that like we're supposed to be scheduling these things out and bouncing back and forth with each and every one of them, and that we need to be committing to doing these things for just a couple months and then like get out of there and just eat food. It's such an important conversation that I think even transparently a lot of people that get into nutrition coaching don't understand, because somebody pays money and they're like, oh, I want fat loss. And, so the coach is like, okay, well, I'll take away your food, which like disclaimer, that doesn't make sense because they could have tried to take down their food for free. Clearly it didn't work. And that's why they're hiring you. And so, if you talk about, nutrition coaching, it's like that first 6 or 12 months with a client, like you're probably eating more food. You're probably, getting them back up to maintenance calories. You're getting their body to a safe space and telling the body, it's, it's okay. It's going to be okay. So that, sometime in the future, they can successfully go to a caloric deficit and, see movement, see transactions happen there. But gosh, like that's, if we want to talk about like my biggest pet peeve, it's like, coaches that are just chronically dieting people down to low calories. Because again, it's not about, you know, the 6-week transformation. It should be about the 6-month, the 6-year transaction.
The lifelong.
Not just that short term.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree. You know, and I think that, I mean, obviously, if it's the coaches, you know, that's a whole other topic. But I think there's a lot of confusion as to, well, what is a calorie deficit? What is maintenance? What is a surplus? I mean, you know, most people, I would argue, don't actually, you know, even if most people don't like weigh their food and log their food accurately, even when they're trying to assess that. And then on the other end, it's like, even if they are as perfect as they can be, there's so much variability in an app or, you know, whatever that, you know, you're not going to be 100% accurate. So, like defining what a calorie deficit is versus surplus versus maintenance, like, do you think it's like, how would you go about, like, I guess, qualifying or quantifying like what that actually is? Because, for example, like, you know, most people are like, oh, well, if I'm eating in a calorie deficit, I should lose weight. Or if I'm in a calorie surplus, I should gain weight. But what if they're technically doing that, but the weight actually isn't changing?
God, you're going to hate this answer because the answer is it depends. Like
Laurie, that's my favorite answer. I love when people say it depends.
There's so many different ways to skin the cat. And so the ultimate answer is that every single fucking diet works. Carnivore works. Keto works. Intermittent fasting works. Paleo, it all works. And so the question then becomes, which one is right for you? Because it's all about, can we be consistent? Can we be adherent? And, you know, can you show up and make shit happen? And so again, you know, it's like, I mostly do macro-based coaching with people. And so if somebody, you know, inquires and they're like, hey, I don't really want to track, I don't really want to weigh and measure my food, I respond back truthfully. It's like, hey, I'm not the coach for you, because I fluidly believe that we should treat nutrition like, you know, a science experiment where we have metrics we can manipulate. You know, we know, hey, if this is the input, you know, this is what the outcome was, and then we can adjust accordingly. Does that mean I have anything against, you know, people that want to intuitively eat, or, you know, no, I'm just not the coach for you. And so I think, like, even with my ebook, like, that's been the hardest part, is again, like, helping people navigate to figure out what's best for them and their lifestyle. Because again, it's like, if somebody's current diet is full of fast food and soda and chips and cookies, they don't necessarily need to do macros. Like, they just need to do a cleanup on the quality of what they're eating, right? But reversely, you know, for some people, it's like, well, if you're already getting in, you know, 500 to 800 grams of vegetables, if you're already getting in 200 to 300 grams of fruit, you're eating enough fiber, you're supplementing all the things you need to be supplementing, like you're working with a good coach, you know, inside of the gym. And, you know, we know that, you know, you're getting 10,000 steps outside the gym, you know, your diet, your lifestyle, your everything is flawless. That's when we have to start looking at, oh, well, maybe this isn't even related to nutrition and dieting right now. Like, maybe we've got some hormone issues, or maybe we've got some gut health issues. And so even, you know, like my early coaching years, like, those weren't questions I was asking. It's like, oh, so tell me about when you go to the bathroom, what happens, you know, or how often are you going to the bathroom? Or again, you know, hey, this is what a normal menstrual cycle looks like, you know, with this understanding, now tell me about yours. Or, you know, asking those questions, like, that's not something I started doing until recently, because I realized, you know, what a big component that is to people. So for example, you know, if you don't have a menstrual cycle, your menstrual cycle is your best indicator of health. It tells you what your body's doing under the hood. You know, we understand women were put on this planet to make babies at a very basic level, right? Like, men can't do that. That is unique to females. So what does it say about the underlying state of your health if you don't have a menstrual cycle and you don't have the ability to make babies? Like, people don't understand that's not an okay thing, right? And so that's where the coaching conversation goes from, hey man, we were worrying about the macros. We need to figure out, you know, we need to get with the doctor. We need to get some testing. You know, we need to do some problem solving, because if you don't have a menstrual cycle, things aren't going to get better in a caloric deficit, right? Like, if food is scarce, the body understands that. And so it's going to shut down reproductive function. And a lot of people, that's a side effect we see is like, oh yeah, like last summer I got super lean and then I also lost my period and I haven't gotten it back since. And you're like, oh, holy shit, right? Well, no wonder now, present day, we're trying to take you to a caloric deficit and nothing's happening. Like, we need to go fix the health things, right? So I think that like coaching at a surface level is so easy. And then it's so complicated because, again, it comes down to like, well, how educated is this person? What does their nutrition, their lifestyle, their exercise, their environment, what does all of that look like? And so it's like everybody is their own unique snowflake. Everyone comes from a different background because, again, if you've never really dieted before, like I recently had a client that it was like, oh, tell me about your exercise habits, or, like, how do you decide the foods that you eat? Well, she wasn't exercising like at all. Like, she knows she should be doing it, but she just hadn't found anything she was passionate about doing. So she wasn't. And same thing, like nutrition wise, it was just like, I don't really put any thought into it. Whatever sounds good, I eat it. And she's been the most fascinating client to me because, again, I'm so conditioned to people that are doing everything right and, not realizing that it's underlying gut stuff or it's underlying, adrenal issues or, menstrual issues or stuff like that. So it's just, there's so many different possibilities there with people. So it's such, like I said, nutrition is so simple and yet so very convoluted and complicated all at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can, just like you said, you can make it as simple as you need to, or it can become as complicated as you've ever, so it really just depends. And I know a lot of, especially clients and other, people out there that are just trying to learn more about nutrition, they hate that answer, but that's just the truth. And honestly, if you hear it the other way of like, I have the perfect plan for everybody, you better run the other way as fast as possible.
Well, and I think like that's the hard part too, is like, the sooner you realize that nutrition, exercise is something that people make money off of, then you quickly understand why everything is so convoluted. And so even, when I went to school, like that was what made me want to put my head through a wall is like, we would, like, I think it's if you go to like CVS or Walgreens, literally if you go in the candy bar section, you'll see like, it'll be like tagged on the Snickers bar and it'll say like approved by registered dietitian, Anna or something like that. And again, it's like when you look at the American Dietetics Association, like the bigger sponsors for all of that are huge companies like Nestle, like Kellogg's, just all these power companies. And so same things, like unfortunately, we have so many dietary recommendations that money was a part of the equation. And so, if you remember, it was like the 90s and, egg yolks and eggs were bad. And that was just simply a power move. Or like, I remember getting spammed as a kid on advertisements where it was like, oh, drink 3 glasses of milk a day. And, present day, it's like, fuck that, dude. Like, I think the statistics usually float, like 65 to 75% of people actually have, some sort of milk allergy or food sensitivity, some sort of lactose intolerance. But again, it's like present day, like most milk on shelves is just sugary water. There's no nutritional value to it because that type of milk is so much different than, say, like raw milk that's never been pasteurized, fresh from a cow. They're two totally different animals. And so very similarly, like I saw another headline, I think it was last week, Mind Pump Media put it on blast. It was talking about, again, like people are trying to say like, oh, eggs are really bad, was, the basic premise of the headline. And then you get into it, it's like, God damn it, guys, like we've got to stop painting this picture of, this food is black or white. There is nothing in nutrition that is black or white. Again, it's just like, well, keto can have application, for example. So for a lot of people, if you're somebody that has a lot of weight to lose, keto can be a really brilliant option. Why? Because it removes all hyperpalatable foods. You suddenly can't eat foods that you're eating or, binging on, such as, chips and pasta and bread. it cuts out all those food groups. So yeah, like keto can have really brilliant application there. But then reversely, if you're somebody that you're slaying, 2-3 hours in the gym, keto is the last thing you should be doing because again, your body needs glucose. It needs those carbohydrates in it because that's your preferential fuel source. Keto can also have brilliant application for if people are having like insulin issues. So like, say, I had a client that her fasting blood glucose, if she would draw her blood first thing when she woke up in the morning, it'd be like 115. And you're like, holy shit, no wonder why our body can't lose weight right now. Like we're having severe issues regulating, insulin and blood glucose levels and stuff like that. But reversely, again, it's like, well, keto's not going to work for you if you love training hard and you love, intense exercise. If you love going to Orange Theory, spin, CrossFit, it's not going to be a good fit for you if you don't like those foods. If you're somebody where it's like, well, do you want to eat high fat and no carbs? And like, I'll even really say like no vegetables because it's like, yeah, you can have like a cup or 2 or 3, but like that's for the day and that's it. Or otherwise, your carbohydrates are too high and you're not going to be in ketosis and stuff like that. And so it's just like every few months, like I feel like carnivore is the hot topic right now. And what's funny is like I've been trying to, get outside my bubble and learn about different nutritional philosophies out there to kind of, again, like it's just like, hey, this isn't right or wrong, but like here's the things you need to understand about this type of diet. Because like even again, like I'll mention like Mind Pump Media did a podcast the other day and I couldn't help but like smile at the subject line, but like the topic of the podcast essentially alluded like, is the keto diet making you fat or, is keto doing more harm than good type of thing. And it was like, whew, like that's dangerous because there's so many people right now that again, keto's just trendy. And then I think that in a few months, you're going to see a lot of people that are trying to combine keto with high intensity exercise. And suddenly it's like, hey, how's those hormone levels doing? Not so good because you haven't been eating the carbs. Cool. Like come back to the land. And so I think, probably the next swing we're going to see is going to be back to some sort of very high carb diet because again, like people love swinging the extremes. Because, very similarly, I think before this, we were kind of on the other spectrum where we were, a lot of people were crushing all the carbohydrates and, no fats. So now, everything always comes full circle, Atkins became keto, then we have carnivore, we have all these similar philosophies kind of just get packaged up under a different name. People buy into them because again, it's like, oh, I haven't tried this. Maybe this will be the magic thing or the magic pill. People unfortunately all trapped to that mentality so hard.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that, I love what you said about any diet can work, but I think the problem is that we're so unique, right? And we're trying to put ourselves in a box. And more so what I challenge people to do is, for those of you that have tried so many different diets, what did you like about them? And what did you not like about them? And how can we build, I don't want to call it a diet, but how do we build like the protocol or the program for you that you can honestly say, I would love to be able to do this for the rest of my life rather than, keto, for example. I just asked the question. I'm like, can you do that for the rest of your life? And I think that's just such a great question for people to ask themselves before starting on something because, I'm all about trial and error and being your own science experiment. And look, if you want to try a diet, like cool, try it. It's okay. But at the same time, it's like, I've never actually followed a diet my whole life, ever.
Yep.
And I think because of that is why I, haven't had to experience a lot of the things that I see. I think it's just, this just brought up something too. It's interesting. When me being an athlete my whole entire life, and I know you can relate, I never focused on my body. It was a byproduct of me just being so active and competing. Same thing through CrossFit. So here I am, I'm 25 years old, whatever, when I finally stopped competing in a sport. And for the first time in my life, I started having some of those body image issues. I started, and it was so weird because I'd never experienced that in my whole entire life. So yeah, I just, I always challenge people. I'm like, look, like just have some type of plan before going into it. What's your exit strategy? Like, are you trying to make something that you're doing for a whole entire life? Or are you just jumping on the bandwagon of the shiny object and the newest thing that came in? But one question I do want to ask, Laurie, is I know that, obviously a lot of the people that you work with are these complex cases.
Yep.
But if we took a step back, or maybe even the 10,000 foot view of, the US, how many, and obviously guys, this isn't going to be completely accurate, but if you had to throw a percentage on it, how many people do you think are actually dealing with these complex issues versus maybe it just needs to be the nutrition, lifestyle, exercise, the habits, cleaning up kind of their lifestyle first?
Oh boy. So I can say this, in the nutrition space, because I tend to fall more still into kind of the CrossFit and bodybuilding space. Like I've never had an interest kind of, I hate the word like general population, but like, again, like an avatar equivalent of my mom is not somebody who I want to work with. Like I'm working with people that are going to the gym, without issue. They're living a pretty active, healthy lifestyle already. And so what we see a lot in the CrossFit space is that people tend to have a slightly higher awareness of nutrition. Most people know to buy higher quality meats. Most people understand the need for vegetables. I think the one that comes to mind is like my friend had her family in town and she was like, oh my God, I had to go buy soda for the first time in 7 years because, again, in my world, it's like, when was the last time I had a soda? Junior high? Like it's just, I'm so in my bubble of, present day habits. So I forget that, wow, there's a lot of people out there that, drink soda and, eat fast food and, think nothing of it. I would say in the CrossFit space that we've seen so many people that are under eating drastically, so people are coming in and kind of the general consensus is, hey, I work out 1 to 3 hours a day. This is how much food I'm eating. And you're like, dear God, like my 62-year-old mother eats more food than you. Like, what are we doing? But then reversely, if we step outside of the CrossFit bubble, there's a lot of people that I'm certain are struggling with overeating and, with going out to eat all the time, eating fast food and having no metrics. Because again, I think in the CrossFit space, like if I walked up to a stranger at a CrossFit gym and I said, hey, I track macros. Do you track macros? I would say probably 80% of people in the CrossFit space would they would be aware where that conversation was going. They would have an awareness that macros refers to, the proteins, carbs, and fats in foods. And, we could have, a fairly intelligent discussion. But reversely, when it's like if I'm having a conversation with my parents, which are 62 and 70, and I said, yeah, Laurie, what do you do for nutrition? I said macros. They'd be like, what is that? And so I think it's all just about the population that you tend to work with. But even, majority, again, like we kind of threw out numbers where it's like I have just under 40,000 followers. Again, most of the people that follow me aren't the types of people that need advice on like, hey, don't drink soda. They're the slightly, higher skilled people where it's like, hey, I go to the gym daily. I'm getting 10,000 steps. I'm tracking my menstrual cycle. I'm getting enough fiber. I eat enough protein. They're very, just more high level conversations. And so it really just depends, who you're kind of catering to. But definitely in the CrossFit space, most people are under eating and don't realize it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the way you said that, because I think it's, I think we hop on social media, we see these different people, we start following these different people. And, for a lot of people, they're talking on very specific things. They have, 2 or 3 things they're talking about all the time. And so I think that was one of the things I noticed the most after getting out of the CrossFit space. Was when I was in the CrossFit space, you're absolutely right. More knowledge on nutrition, a lot more athletic, maybe more under eating. But like, then I get out, I've been speaking at a lot more Orange Theories. And I would actually argue that the majority of people that we work with are people that eat out for the majority of their meals. And they, it's so much more about the nutrition, lifestyle, exercise, like the habits, but they see oh, I have a hormone issue, or, oh, it's my gut health, and I'm like, no, like you're eating fast food every single day of you know what I mean? It's just like, so I think the population, it really, really matters. And you have to really do a good, honest assessment with yourself as to, well, what type of person are you and what type of lifestyle are you actually currently living, and what type of lifestyle have you led up to this point?
And that's like the danger of like blanket statements. I won't name the specific podcast, but it's like I have a love-hate with this podcast because they put out such good content. And so like there's even an episode that's like I put it into our gym programming group, and it was like, listen to, at 20 minutes, like turn off the podcast and stop listening. Because it was just, again, like this blanket advice where they're naming big name athletes and talking about how they're only eating, 200 grams of carbohydrates and training, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours a day. And you're just like, no, like don't drop information like that. Because again, like then we start having this loop where it's like, well, what about your people in the gym that they only train an hour a day? They're going to hear that advice and suddenly go, oh, well, I'm not busting my balls like this game's athlete, so I don't deserve those carbs. And so I think like blanket statements are the hardest part of navigating social media, because even for me, it's like I do, discussion on so many sexy topics of hormones and, menstrual health and all that. But exactly as you said, it's like, well, is it a hormone issue, or do you just need to stop fucking eating dairy or, stop drinking soda? You're crushing, 450 grams of carbohydrates in a day because you eat out all the time. Maybe we just need to get you cooking at home a little more. And, yes, you might have some hormonal imbalance, but like, I think the discussion is always like, what are the cannonballs sitting in front of us versus, what are the bullets? Because we want to go with cannonballs, right? So like we want to talk about, naturally improving hormone health, plastics, stuff like using, metal shakers or metal drinkware rather than plastic. That's a really great move. But that's a waste of your time, and that's like the 1%. And if you're drinking soda, that's what we need to go after, right? Like that is going to immediately take away, abundance of calories and sugar and extra carbohydrates that our body doesn't need. Like that's the fucking cannonball. Like, and so it's kind of like I'm gonna murder the quote, but it's like, missing the trees type of thing where it's like, what are the biggest things right now you can do that are going to give the biggest ROI? Like, go do those things. I'm like, what are those? They're not sexy things. It's not, oh, take this sexy hormone, improving supplement, or it's not, oh, this healthy gut health supplement. Like, what are cannonballs for most people? Eating 5 to 6 cups of vegetables a day, eating a couple cups of fruit, going to the gym every day, getting enough protein, sleeping 8 hours a night. Are any of those sexy? No. Are those the shit that actually like move the needle hella forward? Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. And I love the way that you kind of like talk about that. I use the example of like if I took a jar and I put the big rocks in there, so like those 5 big rocks, right? And then once you graduate, if you will, from those, and you've got a good consistent foundation, okay, now there's smaller rocks or pebbles, right? And there's sand. And like, this is when we can start to get into the weeds and like, really nerd out and learn more and more and more. And I think that's what's so exciting about, the journey is like, I mean, here it is. It's like, I've almost been in the field for 10 years now, but like I'm still on the journey. It's this staircase that literally never ends. Right. And so it's like,
the bigger thing too, there is like at whatever point you're like, I'm doing all this shit, that's when you start dropping the ball. And like, I joke, like the one I will own all day long, I'm never thirsty. Even if I go outside, even if I go sweat, if I go work out for hours, like I have to force myself to drink water. And like, even in my planner today, it was like intention for the day, drink freaking water. And it's the most simple thing, right? But it's something that I struggle with the most. But again, even with coaching clients, it's like, you're going to be crushing it, killing it. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey dude, sleep's looking a little whack these days. What are we doing? And they're like, oh shit, yeah, I've been really bad about going to bed. So it's like, at whatever point we master the basics, a lot of times we start again and we start again. And so I think that's exactly as you said, like the nutrition stuff never ends. And, if you asked me 3 or 4 years ago, I would have been like, I'm the picture of health. Look at all these healthy habits. And then like, even now I look back and I'm like, present day, you know, it's like I've got sauerkraut in all my food. You know, I'm eating sprouts because they're great for liver detoxification. You know, all this hipster bullshit that I wasn't doing back then. Or, you know, again, like my version of healthy versus my narrative of today's healthy are still two totally different animals. And so it's like just not getting overwhelmed. It's showing up and like doing the right things, you know, consistently. But then also, again, you know, it's like I remember I had somebody DM me, and it just so happened I was cooking for a friend. And so I put up like a meal idea. And so it was literally like, you know, a couple ingredients, you know, all laid out. And, you know, I kind of got this nasty message where it was like, oh, I thought you were gluten and dairy free, and you're just putting out a bad message to, you know, social media and blah, blah, blah. And like, even if it had been my meal, initially, like my reaction was just like, wow, like you're really invested in what I'm doing. So like, cheers. But be like, I'm also allowed to be human. Like I completely understand and will own the fact that is dairy and gluten consumption conducive to my autoimmune condition? Absolutely not. That being said, if it's my birthday and my friends bring me a birthday cake, I'm gonna eat the fucking birthday cake, right? You know, it's like, is that gonna be me daily? No, but like I don't understand like that crucifixion sometimes on social media, where it's like, again, you know, if I was regularly spamming that sort of thing, that's like, I put up pictures of my food all the time. You know, I talk about the ways I eat, but I also try to talk about being human and being flexible and understanding repercussions, right? So like, I know, like, can I have gluten and dairy? Sure. Am I going to feel like shit later? Absolutely. So then the question becomes, am I okay with that outcome? Yes. But in my world, it's like, I think it's equally important to show people like, hey, I do also eat, you know, normal people foods, or I am a human. Like I do have desserts, you know, like somebody, I put up a picture of something where, like I said, you know, it was like, I went to Whole Foods and had like, it was like a frozen cookie dough or something. And like, so many people DM'd me and were just like, oh my God, like you're a normal person. Like, yes. And so I think again, like that's always my goal, is just being transparent. Like we all don't make perfect decisions around food. Like nobody is perfect. There is no such thing as being perfect with food. There is no good foods. There's no bad foods. It's just finding the balance that works for you. And, you know, even we see this with clients, like some people love date nights. Some people love traveling and eating out. I'm not one of them. Like I hate eating out, because eating out means I'm going to have a stuffy nose, something inevitably, you know, regardless of how I order it, how I have them cook, I'm going to have some slight food, reaction, because my body is just, you know, that's just me, you know. So I personally choose to cook and eat all my food. But other people, you know, again, like what's your non-negotiables? What's the things that moves the needle forward for you? Because if you're not enjoying the way you live, like I don't have food FOMO. Like I said, I hate eating out. Will I still go to restaurants, hang out with friends? Sure. Would I go and order a drink? Maybe, you know, a lot of people might sit on the receiving end and feel left out, or they're having food FOMO, or, you know, that's not going to work for them long term. And so it all just comes back to, you know, what are your non-negotiables as a person? How are the ways that you want to eat? And yes, you know, sometimes, especially like if we're in a diet phase, you can't say, oh, but I really want to eat out with friends. It's like, well, do you want to lose weight and get shit done? Or do you want to eat out and not get the results you're looking for? Like, it doesn't matter to me, you know, what the answer is, but like you're in control of this car, right? That's a decision you make. And so I think like that's just the bigger discussion, is like, again, when you realize on planet Earth, like if you don't enjoy what you're doing, you're not going to be consistent and hear it all day long. So I don't care if you can perfectly crush keto for 2 months. If we hit day 61 and then suddenly, you know, you're like over here face first in a bag of Cheetos, and you know it escalates into a big long binge. Like I would have rather found and built a way for us to live that, again, you know, we could do, you know, for our whole life. Or again, you know, there's nothing wrong with, again, if you're like, hey, I want to, you know, tighten things up, and you know, I think I'd like to carb cycle and work on fat loss the next, you know, 8 weeks. Cool, that's totally fine. And then, you know, we can transition you back to different things. So I think when we just understand that so much of nutrition is tools in the toolbox, that, you know, we just want to be educated, understand it, and know how to use it, then everything else becomes the same. Because again, you're like, for fat loss phases, like I've done Matador. I loved it. Reversely right now, like I've got a photo shoot coming up in like 2 or 2.5 weeks. And it was like, never carb cycled. This might be a fun time to try, because again, if you've been tracking macros for 5 or 6 years, that shit gets old real fast. So like you do want the shiny objects. But, again, people are going to see that. I'm going to talk about it on social media and people are going to be like, oh, I should carb cycle. And it's like, don't just do it because I'm doing it. Do it because you understand the why behind you doing it, or because, there's a specific purpose. Like that's so important,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, the big takeaway from all that is like, it's self-awareness. Like when you start to become more self-aware, when you start to create that awareness in your life, whether it's yourself or something that happens to you or a coach coming into your life or whatever, I think once you start to create that awareness, life starts to become pretty binary. It's black and white. It's like, oh, I know that if I eat this, because you have the issues that you have, like it's going to cause, this, and this, but it's my birthday. I'm going to enjoy it. And like, that's cool. I'm okay with that. I know I'm not eating it every single day. I've created the awareness that these things do cause me problems, so it's just, it's like, I just tell people, I'm like, my job is to help educate you and equip you with the tools that you need to be successful on your own for the rest of your life. Right. So if you want to try something or get educated on something, absolutely. Like that's my job. I'm a coach. Right. Like I might recommend maybe that you're going down a route that is going to be way harder than you have to. You could do something maybe that'd be easier, but at the same time, I'm not here to judge you or anything like that. Like I'm here to be on your team. And I'm here to, actually like be that person for you that I think is what a true coach actually is.
I had somebody the other day, because I made the statement that like, if you're trying to gain muscle and eat in a surplus, that you shouldn't do intermittent fasting. And so of course, like somebody responds, they're like, well, I'm eating a surplus and I'm intermittent fasting and it's working just fine. It's like, cool. I'm just telling you there's a lot of different ways you can eat the surplus that don't suck at that, right? Like you're trying to eat more food in a small window. Like why would you do that? But again, it's like, well, at the end of the day, like this is choose your own adventure, right? Or like I feel for like plant-based people, because it's just like I don't work with plant-based athletes, I don't work with plant-based clients. Because on my end, what I see time and time again is it makes it so much harder to have an optimal menstrual cycle. And like ultimately as a coach, my goal for you is always to optimize health. And so it's like, hey, like I respect that you want to eat that way, but like I'm not the coach for you. Like I'm not going to have recommendations on how to hit your protein, or I'm not going to have the tools in the toolbox to give you, because it's just not one that again, it's not that I believe in it. Like it's not that, like, but it's just I'm not really good at that. So like go find somebody that is really good at that, right? Or somebody that is, vegan or vegetarian itself. Like a lot of coaches have, if you've been through something personally, you're probably a really good coach at that because you personally understand it, you've experienced it, you've lived it. Recently, I followed specific carbohydrate diet for 10 days because I was like cranking on a gut health protocol. And like it gave me a whole new understanding, because again, it was like, what carbohydrates can you eat? None of them. It was like I was eating tons of like black beans and lentils and like, acorn squash and like things that aren't in my usual routine. It was fun because again, it got me out of my comfort zone. It got me creative. And then after that 10 days, I was like, oh, God bless. Like, thank you. I'm ready to eat, rice and potatoes and stuff like that. But yeah, like coaching stuff, man, like it's all just about, you have to dabble in a little bit of everything. You have to have that self-awareness piece. And, you have to, I went through a phase where I played If It Fits Your Macros hard. So like for people that aren't aware, if it fits your macros or just tracking macros in general, like the consensus is like at the end of the day, if you wanted to get shredded, you could do it and eat Pop-Tarts. You could eat cookies and candy and still get shredded. As long as it fits in your macros, as long as you hit your protein, carb, and fat and your calorie goals, it can happen. So I went through that extreme phase where it was like, we lived in Deep Ellum. And so we would go down to Glazed Donuts and get these awesome, massive donuts the size of your face. and then it was like, well, what am I eating the rest of the day? Oh, we only have 500 calories to play with because we ate all the food. Fuck. But, I made it work. And so, again, like nutrition, it's like, don't live on your island of this is good, this is bad. Like, run from people that say that. But again, be self-aware that, certain things have certain outcomes. And that, if performance is a goal, don't be eating in ways that are low carb, like keto. You probably need to be eating a lot of carbohydrates and, ample food. Reversely, if your goal is, health, well, you probably shouldn't be eating cookies and candy and bullshit all day, So it's like, it's figuring out like, what are your goals? What are your non-negotiables? And then more importantly, what does your health look like and all of that? Because as a coach, like health still has to be at the forefront. Unless you're somebody that, if you're into, doing bodybuilding stage, if you want to be strutting a tiny bikini, cool. Like health isn't an outcome in that. Like you can't really worry about health much in that, that hemisphere. So I'll just figure out, what do you want as a person? And I think a lot of people, again, people say, I want to be shredded. I want a six pack. And then when they see what it takes to achieve that body type, most people dip their feet in the water, and then most people are like, deuces, I'll just go back this way, So I think that's the fun part too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's a journey, you know what I mean? It's like, guys, like the 30, 60, 90 day or setting this like timeline on yourself is just, I almost feel like it's just the easiest way to create like self-sabotage in your life. It's like, how do I start to look into just the day to day? How do I start to look into like just, one day at a time of my life and actually realizing that I only get one of these things. I only get one life. Like I get one opportunity. I literally could walk outside and die today or tomorrow or whatever. And like, don't like, I think that regret scares me more than anything in my whole entire life. And I never want to look back and just be like, I wish or whatever, And so, I don't know. I think 10 years ago when I dedicated the rest of my life to helping other people, it's been the most fulfilling thing that has ever happened to me. And I know that's, the same thing for you. Like helping people is like our oxygen. I mean, it's when people ask me, how do I find out like what I should do with my life or my why or whatever? I'm like, dude, just try to find something helping other people and you'll be happy. Like you'll find fulfillment. Like somehow, some way, it doesn't have to be nutrition or fitness or anything else, but like go out there and help people. Because when you do that, like it's just, it's so much bigger than you. And that's just the most exciting part of life, I feel like.
And absolutely. It's like, and the funny part, right? Like because we both live like the CrossFit coach life, then got into nutrition. But it's like, if your end all be all goal on planet Earth is to make money, those are not the sectors to be in. Like, don't be a CrossFit coach. Don't be a nutrition coach. Don't try to run a gym. Like, you don't make money doing that stuff, because what you're actually getting is changing people's lives, right? You're getting to, like my goal for people is always like, hey, we might work together for, 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever. But at some point, like, I want you to come back to me and say, you know what, I'm ready to go off and crush it on my own. And like, I've gotten so many emails, so many calls where it was like, like the last interaction, I'd have like tears streaming down my ear, down my face as I'm reading these emails, or, like I'm bawling my eyes out on the phone, because it's like, being able to take somebody at, maybe they're terrified of eating out with friends, and their whole life revolves around the scale, their clothing size, what they look like. They care about what other people think. They haven't, they're not able to, just live life, do the things they do. Marie Kondo, like, do the things that, does this bring you joy? Like, getting people from those super negative, transactions and just giving them, getting them back to society. Like I always tell people, like, I don't have transformation before and afters. And I hate transformation pictures before and afters anyway. Because again, it's not about so much the physical body, it's about what's going on up here between the two ears. And so, for a lot of the clients that I'm working with, again, it's like, if you're having severe hormonal issues, if you're not having a period, if you have low testosterone, like we're just trying to get you back basic life things, right? Like, can you have sex with your wife again? Or, again, like you're able to have a baby. I think to this day, still one of my favorite DMs that somebody ever sent me is, they said, hey, I've been following, this past year and change. I spent 3 years of my life trying for a baby unsuccessfully. Doctors weren't helpful. And through reading your content, reading the books you suggested, the podcast, you promoted, and she sent a picture and it was, the little ultrasound that she finally got pregnant. And I said to my best friend, I was like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. But those are what I'm working with people. I don't hire clients I want abs because I don't care about the aesthetics. Obviously, I'm not trying to make clients fat. Obviously we're everybody can go through those phases, but what I'm fixing is, again, how do you go out and make memories with your friends and your family? And how can you be a functioning person in society that you don't have foods that you're afraid of? You don't have social situations that, terrify you, or, you're not the person that, oh, hey, I go on vacation. Every time I come back 10 pounds heavier. How do we help you just go on vacation, make memories, and come back exactly the same and not feel deprived and not feel restricted? That's the shit that, just makes my little heart, just expand and blow up into pieces. And so, the nutrition stuff, man, we're on this planet for 80, 90, 100 years old. Please don't spend your entire life being encompassed in how you look, obsessing over food, obsessing over a number between your toes on a scale. How do we get you to have healthy relationships with food? How do we give you freedom via food and exercise? That's the goal for people that I work with. And that's the goal, for people that follow my content is if I walk in a room, I fluidly believe every single person in that room should be following me because I know that my content is going to help them be better in some aspect of their life. That's my goal.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. I mean, one thing we always say is it's people come to us for nutrition, or nutrition coaching, but what they leave with is the mindset that's developed along the way,
And it's life coaching, right? When people ask, what do you do? I half the time I don't even say nutrition coaching because it's the macros or the nutrition are the 5%. It's 95% of, again, hey, you're working out 7 days a week. If you could work out 4 days a week and look exactly the same, why the fuck wouldn't you? It's those types of transactions that we want to chase.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's it's ultimately, I want to make you the happiest that you've ever been. I want you to live your best life, and it's if you have the mindset that you said earlier of always thinking about all of those things all the time, it's it's impossible to be happy. You're constantly struggling with that relationship. And so anyways, Laurie, I could sit here and chat all day long. I think you're so I did a podcast here last weekend with Alex, and it was recorded live, and we went on forever. I mean, it was probably a 3-hour podcast, but this is definitely the longest one other than the one with her. So it was so much fun. I mean, I think that there's so many good nuggets to take away, especially for your viewers out there, maybe kind of being able to learn more about your story on a deeper level. And then also just everything that we've gotten into here in the end with nutrition. So thank you so much for taking the time, especially 2 hours or however long we've been going here. But Laurie, what are you most excited about? Obviously you mentioned the ebook. So maybe go a little bit more in depth on that and where people can get that at, and then where they can find you on social media and website and all that.
Yeah, so it's just my name. We kept everything super basic. So my website is lauriechristineking.com. My Instagram handle is the same. Instagram is Laurie Christine King. My ebook version, we've just been calling it ebook 2 because we still hadn't quite decided on the name. But again, the topics is all just about fat loss, gaining, and maintaining, helping people to understand how to periodize their nutrition, how to get where they're trying to go. That will be probably dropping here in the next month or two. And at this point, we've been slaving on this for months and months. So I'm so ready to be there, but again, picky, making sure that it's perfect before we release it. to all of you guys to enjoy. So that'll be coming. We kind of briefly touched on it as well. But basically, we have an aesthetics-based gym program. It's called Paragon Performance Training. And so it's got two different sectors. If you're like, hey, I just want to look good, feel good, and, crush life, that's Paragon. It's 4 to 5 days of programming. There's basically 3 upper body days, 2 lower body days. And our Facebook group for that is phenomenal. We've got hundreds and hundreds of people in there. And so people are able to, again, ask nutrition questions, ask, exercise, or like, hey, I'm at a Globo gym, how can I do today's programming, or what can I substitute? My partner Brian and I, we kind of will handle all of that. And so we also have a second part to Paragon because we realize a lot of people, love CrossFit, or a lot of people have a programming, a program that they love, whether that's CompTrain, whether that's Misfits, whether that's Invictus, or they just love following the gym programming. And so we came out, it's simply called Accessory RX Plus. And so it's literally just 10 to 15 minutes every day. It's an accessory program you can add to the program you already love doing for extra, strength and aesthetics as well. So the goal behind Paragon is solely just, again, how do we give people freedom via food and exercise? And so that's kind of been it's my baby, it's my passion project. We are actually right now, they got the content from my ebook before anybody else. So this Monday, actually, we're kicking off our next nutrition stint, which is regardless of where you're at, giving people the tools so that, say they join Paragon and they're like, hey, like, my hormones suck, I feel like shit in the gym, like I'm just in a state of letting my body heal, they can still jump in on our 30 days of nutrition because they're going to get, a big PDF that's like, hey, like this is just a phase, and at some point you're going to be in a place to want to gain muscle, you're going to be in a place to want to, do a fat loss phase. And so they'll have the tools to do that via, Matador protocols, or carb cycling, or macros, or, stuff like that. So forever, like, Paragon is my baby. I don't do tons of nutrition coaching present day because I realized that, yes, I could spend 30 minutes to an hour helping one person, or I could pour that same 30 minutes to an hour, into helping mass quantities of people. Like, yes, helping one person's cool, but why not help more people at that time? So I really don't do lots of nutrition coaching present day, but I still put out free content 4 to 5 times a week. Later this year, we've got plans for a YouTube channel. I'm coming out with a podcast and, stuff like that. So we're definitely just finding ways, again, of really just helping people better their nutrition and exercise philosophies. So how do we get it to people across a different modality? Because again, not everybody loves Instagram, and that's where I tend to live. So same thing, how do we get on other platforms to get out that message and reach people? So it's definitely going to be an exciting year. And again, just keeping things moving, and super excited about it.
That's awesome. I love it. I love it. Laurie, I know one of your aspirations is to speak on a stage, to do a TED talk, right? So let's say that opportunity arose and you're speaking tomorrow.
Yep.
Okay. What is the message that you want to scream to all of the women in the world? Like, obviously women's health is your thing. If it could be a one-liner or one sentence, what would it be?
It would basically just revolve around the concept, and I mentioned this earlier, but it would be the things that I wish I could tell my 16-year-old self. And because that could encompass all the nutrition, the exercise things, the environment, it encompasses everything, because again, we don't live in a vacuum. And so ironically, I know you used to compete at the Fittest Games as well, but I'm actually one of their speakers. So we're starting to get out. And again, we're starting to build out plans because I can do nutrition seminars all day long. That's not exciting to me, done that all day long. But one of my goals is, again, the internet's cool. Yes, you can connect with people around the world, but how do we actually get in front of people, face to face, and just spread that message? There's just no there's nothing better than, meeting people face to face and having that real human connection. And so, yeah, even when I speak at Fittest Games here in May, that's kind of the discussion is, the things I wish I could tell my 16-year-old self, and then also kind of riding along the lines of, um, the different ways that hormonal birth control might be affecting you, or the things that you need to know about your menstrual cycle that, you know, you didn't learn in sex ed and, you know, stuff like that. So I'm super, super excited to kind of start dipping my feet in those waters for sure.
I love that. That's exciting. And I think that, you know, I mean, even me, I mean, I've learned a lot from the content that you've put out, and really it's like inspired me to go and dig deeper and like learn more about a lot of these areas. And, you know, again, I can't say it enough times. I mean, the things, or the examples of somebody getting pregnant after not being able to, you know, the people that are like, oh my God, I've learned more about my menstrual cycle than, you know, from you as a male than I have from anybody else in my whole entire life. You know, just countless things like that. But, you know, I think that, we're in some very exciting times, and I'm excited for the future and wherever everything's going. So, yeah, with all that said, the last however many hours here, Laurie, thank you so much for taking the time. And, yeah, we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Justin. Such a pleasure to get in front of your audience, and thank you for having me.